Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm excited to have back with me Nicole Sodoma. She has been on the podcast before. It's been a while though. She is a nationally recognized family law attorney, author, and thought leader, redefining divorce, co-parenting, and modern family dynamics. She is the founder and managing principal of Sodoma Law, which is the largest family law firm in North and South Carolina. So all you Carolinians, take note. She is a former litigator, certified parenting coordinator, and a collaborative law attorney. And she is also a step parent, a mother, an ex-wife, entrepreneur, and all of the things. So, definitely belongs right here for all the reasons. Nicole, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. It's funny, I do wear a lot of hats, but I don't think I wore all those hats when we met before. I have to go back and
I'm not sure. I'm not
it
sure,
feels like
but
a life ago, man, right?
it was a while ago. I don't even remember. I should look it up. But anyway,
Yes.
we're gonna talk today about a topic that a lot confuses a lot of people, intrigues a lot of people, sort of scares a lot of people, which is separation. Not just divorce, but like whether it's legal separation, just physical separation. And by the way, this is also going to depend. There are certain things that will depend on your state. Um, I know North Carolina, for example, requires separation for a year before you can even start the divorce process, right? So certain states have those. Some states don't even have legal separation. Um, but mostly people want to know, like, should we separate? Should we separate first? What are all the things people need to know for about this, Nicole?
Okay, well, and I always have to go through and clarify too, because every one state is different, just like you said, but
Yep.
also understanding what the words mean. That's
Right.
so important. So, for example, yes, in North Carolina, you have to be separated for a year and a day before you can start the divorce process. However, you should not wait a year and a day to resolve the issues of how do we split our stuff? How do we resolve custody? Is there going to be an alimony obligation? Who's going to pay for what when it comes to the children, child support? So, how do we take care of insurance? So, there are all of these things that you can do before separation, after separation, and before you get legally divorced
Mm-hmm.
that are so important. In fact, if you waited until a year and a day to resolve all those things, our statutes actually say that a lot of those things date back to when you separated. So
Right.
you're going to cost yourself more trouble and money and legal fees than you're going to want to if you start that process early. The idea is that the courts don't want you to be unmarried legally until you've had a year to think about it. But the
Mm-hmm.
reality is, because we're a Bible Belt, is what I suspect for all these years. And now every state is going to have its own set of rules. Some of them are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina is very different. I used to practice in Washington State and Seattle. That was different.
Sure.
And so, just recognizing one, what the requirement is, but also what does that mean for you? Because I'll have people that come in that haven't separated and they'll hear, oh, I know it takes a year before we can actually get divorced. And I'm like, yes, however, the law in North Carolina treats you as if you're unmarried from the time you separate. So we get to work on all this stuff in the interim, and actually getting divorced is like a punctuation mark. It is,
Right. You
most of
can.
the time, we want all that stuff hammered out before you are actually able to get legally divorced.
So I just want to clarify because this is something that is very confusing to a lot of people, right?
Yes.
We have to be separated for a year. Okay, so what is separation?
Great question.
Is that
Right.
somebody has moved out, or is it we have just decided? Like, what constitutes separation?
So some states are going to require that you file at the time of separation. And then you go, file what? Well, ask your state, ask your lawyer,
Right, because it
see
could be
what you need to
filed for legal
file.
separation
Yes,
in
in
some
North
states.
Carolina. Wait, in North Carolina, you don't have to file anything. Which I always thought is, people always are so fascinated with that. They're like, hey, we're separated, so now we need to file. File what?
Mm-hmm.
In North Carolina, nothing.
Mm.
So when you have been separated for a year and a day, you can file asking the court for an entry of a divorce judgment because you've been separated a year and a day. Well, how are they ever going to know that? Like, right? Because one, you have
Interesting.
signed an affidavit saying you've been separated, and hardly ever, and I've been practicing 25 years, twice I've litigated the issue of when was our separation
The date
date.
of separation.
The
Mm-hmm.
reason it's important in most states is because it's often a date that we use to value items
Right.
marital in your marital state. It might be an argument about when you met somebody, if your state has certain rules about what happens if you commit adultery, or if you're one of those crazy states like ours that has an alienation statute. Like, when you separated is going to become pretty important. So how do you determine when you separated? The idea of separation, if you want to make it really clean, it's, well, I signed this apartment lease here, or we had a one-page document that we signed, and it said we agree we separated. We have a text message between the two of us that says, I mean, it could be something really simple. If it's undisputed, it won't be difficult at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Separated means that you're no longer living under the same roof, and one of you has the intention of no longer being married.
Okay. So, and then the question becomes, well, like, how do we make that decision if we haven't made all these other decisions? How do we know who's going to move out if we don't know who, like, what the value of the house is, or if we're buying each other out? How do I pay for an apartment if I don't know what my support is? Right? There's a lot of chicken and egging here.
Yes. Yes, agreed. And there is no law that's keeping you there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you make the decision to move out, or someone makes the decision to move out, unless there is an agreement in place, you're winging it. Unless there's an agreement in place, or unless a court tells you otherwise. So I I can't remember the last time I advised somebody to move out unless the situation involved domestic violence.
Sure.
And because once you move out, you lose access to your home.
Mm-hmm.
Some states, including mine, would say that once you move out, the locks can be changed and it is then considered criminal domestic trespass, even if your name's on the house.
Right.
And so, and then you're going to be responsible for the expenses of where you live. And if your name is on the debt at the house where you were living, you might be responsible for the expenses there, even though you're not living there, but you want to protect your credit. So, knowing how all these things are going to happen is really important. As a parent, as a partner, really understanding what that looks like, and then making an educated decision. Now, I understand that not everybody's in that position, and there are plenty of people, plenty of clients over the years that have said, screw it. Like, I'll deal with whatever comes my way,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't stay anymore. It's not healthy for me, and
Yep.
that's okay too.
That's right.
It's going to be harder on you, but it's going to be okay.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
we might have to, it won't be pretty, and we can clean it up. But it's just harder on everyone when you don't have that plan. But sometimes that is what is necessary.
Sure, sure. And, I think, and there are ways to make interim plans, right? Like you said, like if we can spend this year hammering out the details, it's really just a matter of I'm file at the end of that year and a day, as you said, you just file what you've come up with, and then, however long it takes in your state, 6 months later, whatever, a judge signs off on it, you're divorced. Um,
In some states,
but
the judge doesn't even have to sign off on the agreement
Mhm.
between the two of you. The judge just wants to know that those issues have been resolved in order to get divorced.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Um, and so in the states that have legal separation, where you do file something, what is the benefit or the drawback of filing for legal separation before getting divorced? Is there any? What is the
It's
point?
I would say it's very state specific as to what the
Hmm.
consequences are. And the thing that comes to mind for the states that I'm aware of is going to be based on valuations,
Hmm.
meaning the value of certain assets and debts. I think that comes into play. So,
Hmm.
regardless of where
Hmm.
you are going to have to deal with at least three issues. One is how we divide our stuff. I'm always like using my hands. One is how we divide our stuff. Two is, and when I say stuff, I mean assets and debts. I mean
Hmm.
furniture and bank accounts, retirement, businesses, if you own businesses together. So you have to understand what is included in your stuff, right? Because sometimes people, like you'll hear plenty of people that will say, "Oh, I heard inheritances weren't included." Well, know what your state includes. Like that's really important.
In some states it is, unfortunately.
Or how you used the money that came from an inheritance. Can you trace it back? So there are all these things. So you need to know what goes into your stuff pot and then know how it's going to be divided. That's one. Two is if you have children, what a parenting schedule is going to look like and what support for your children looks like. And the third, of course, is alimony, called different things in different states: spousal maintenance, spousal support, alimony, whatever you want to call it. It is a payment from one spouse to the other if there's a deficiency and a surplus. And some states have calculators or pretend to have calculators, others don't. And I always there are some lawyers that have like on their sites it'll say like
Yeah.
click on our alimony calculator, but there's like my state doesn't have an alimony calculator, so it's like a
Yeah, most states they all have a child support calculator, but not but spousal support is always very
yes. I mean
wishy-washy.
that's why I describe it as like a deficiency and a surplus and what's reasonable and necessary and standard of living and all those things. So knowing what that obligation is, if there is one, if someone's been barred from receiving it but would otherwise be entitled, how much and how long. And you get the question, of course, like, well, what if we're making X amount of money now, but we're making 10 times that in 4 years? Can I ask for more? Or what if I lose my job? So there are all these nuances. Notice that in none, no, not yet have I used the word divorce,
Right.
because those three issues are so critical to the process. And ideally, we know all how those issues all are going to work out by the time we actually get into our marriage. But in some states, and I'll say in North Carolina, you could live under that contract um, forever and not get divorced and not lose the benefits of marriage, like health insurance, like you might have health insurance through your partner.
Hmm.
And I've got clients that are still married that have been separated and living under a contract for more than a decade. They get along. They weren't meant to be together. They were good partners, but didn't but lost the intimacy, lost the purpose that they found for
Hmm.
being married, and so they live under a contract so that they can share benefits.
Yes, and that is a choice, right? So that
Yes.
and that is a choice. And you can do that. You can do that in some states. I think New York State, you can file for legal separation and do all of the, bifurcating, right, of
Yes.
all of the stuff
Yes.
and stay married because it benefits you in some way or other. One or both of you. Hmm.
Right. And that is a lovely thought for the emotionally mature humans who are capable of doing it.
Ding 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 ding.
Yes, I know. I know. It's hard
Uh-huh.
when it gets real.
Yes. And so, yeah, and so what's the drawback? Like what's the danger? If there is emotional like immaturity, or if somebody gets mad, someone pisses someone off, someone starts dating and the other person's pissed off about it, like what becomes the danger there?
There are lots of things
Hmm.
because you are still tied together if there's not an agreement that outlines what the relationship is.
Hmm.
I think of liability because, of course, I'm a lawyer, and what you could do to damage each other's credit. I think of the IRS. They don't care whether whether there's an agreement, right? Um,
Well, now does
so
this apply for legal separation? Because doesn't legal separation actually separate those that sort of protects you in states that have it.
In states that have it, it's going to be treated differently. But if
Hmm.
you have an agreement in a state that is not like that, and you have an agreement that you don't have to file, then you are relying on the agreement for any indemnification. So, if
Right.
you have an agreement in place, and your former partner's creditor comes to you to pay a debt that was owned jointly by the both of you, but it's assigned to you, and they say, well, we want you to pay it on your partner's behalf. If you pay it, you now have a contract to rely on to go back to your partner and say, hey, I had to pay this for you. You have to now indemnify me or pay me back for what I spent. And if you make me hire an attorney, I'm going to make you pay their fees.
Hmm.
So, an example of living under the terms of a contract, if that is what you so choose. But it is really, you know, it's more rare. It becomes more rare. Uh, it's more rare than you'd think. It's like a postnuptial agreement. I
Right.
talk about postnuptial agreements a lot because I think that it's an opportunity to save a relationship. And I'm a marriage, love, and divorce attorney. And if you have two individuals who are capable of executing a postnup so that they can focus on their marriage, but we don't see that many of them either because they're
No.
hard. It's hard to live under a contract like that.
Say more about that, about creating a postnup and how you feel like it actually can help or save a marriage.
So I think of,
Let's define it first for those who
right.
may not be familiar. Hmm.
So a postnup it's if you think of the terms of a prenup is this is what happens. It's not effective until you get married. And then if our marriage if we're unsuccessful for whatever reason, we fall out of love. I One of us has an addiction problem. One of us falls in love with somebody else. One of us is has some sort of trauma that isn't. I don't know. There are lots of reasons people get divorced that aren't
Sure.
salacious.
Hmm.
Um, and I actually think of the trauma one because I have had a client who was in a terrible car accident, and the wife was like, "I love this person. I just I don't think I can do this for the rest of my life." And
Mm.
the person who got injured was like, "I get it. Like, I don't think I'd want you to do it either. Like,
Yeah.
you're living for me."
Right.
So I think that's back to that emotional maturity thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely.
But crazy things happen, right?
Hmm.
Um, I've had since marriage equality, I've had clients leave their partners for same sex because
Hmm.
they realized that they were gay or knew they were gay and were too afraid to come out of the closet. So there are all kinds of reasons marriages end.
Hmm.
Some headline worthy, some not, of course. So the prenup would take effect when the marriage ends. Well, that's kind of what a postnup does. A postnup says we're married, but we are going to execute this agreement during our marriage in the event we separate. And it is mostly used to deal with financial matters.
Hmm. Hmm.
So things that, so an example would be I had a client who she found out that her husband had a gambling problem and had incurred a ton of debt and that she did not know about it. Well,
Right.
it might be considered marital debt. It might have been in her name. The creditors might have come after her, and she said, "I will stay together, but you're responsible for this. And if we ever should separate, this is never my responsibility. I want nothing to
Yes.
do with it." We've used it when couples, when one party committed an adultery. And we had clauses in it like we've had clauses if you start this relationship again, if you're seen in the carpool line with this person, if it was very, very, very strict about what communication could happen between these two people. And if any of those things happen, this is what's going to happen to our estate. But I
Yeah.
don't want to think about any of that right now. What I want to think about is how to parent with you, how to fall back in love with you, all those things. And I don't want to have to worry about how the money is going to impact us if we separate because we take one pot and we divide it into two.
Hmm.
And that's a financial strain that people don't want to have to think about. The most obvious time to use a postnup is if you've come into an inheritance or you own a business. or you've received a business and you want to make sure that that business stays separate and apart.
Mm, mm.
Hey, my love, quick interruption here. I know that divorce is hard enough on its own, but high conflict divorce is something else entirely. When every decision becomes a battle, every message feels loaded, and you are constantly second guessing your next move, you need more than information. You need ongoing strategy, expert guidance, and a community of women who understand exactly what you're navigating. Phoenix Rising is the place to get all of that and more. Phoenix Rising is my group coaching program for women who have decided to leave or who are already in the process of divorce. In it, you get live coaching with me, monthly trainings, quarterly guest experts, access to all of my resources, and a private community so that you don't have to figure this out alone. Learn more and join us at kateanthony.com/Phoenix Rising. I promise that wherever you are in the process, this group will support you in ways you never even knew that you needed. So join us at kateanthony.com/Phoenix Rising. And now back to our episode.
Mm. Okay, great. So, important, right? The prenup is created before
Yeah.
pre-nuptials, before the
Post is
nuptials.
after.
Post
Yes.
is after, right? A good time to create, like in this separation period.
Yeah.
So a postnup is a document that is created with an attorney and signed by both people. So if you want to get separated, that sort of is part of the contract. Yes, like when you're talking about living under contract, like a postnup could be that.
Yes. It could be a contract you're living under
Hmm. Is there a
during your
time?
marriage that is effective at the time you separate, but you've negotiated it during your marriage.
Right. And now, is there a time limit? Like, isn't there like I think I know one client who's negotiating a postnup, but they can't
The
file for
sunset
divorce.
clause.
Yeah, they can't file for divorce for a certain period of time after signing it. Yes, is that right?
There, it is, my guess is, I had to pause for a minute because I was thinking about different states and the way that different places
Mm-hmm.
do it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, there are all kinds of things you can put inside a contract. Um,
Right. Okay.
so whether that is a state requirement or we've decided that, when we get to this point, you can put in a
Yeah.
postnup or a prenup, if we separate, I'm going to be the one that ends up with the house, but you can stay there for, 2 months. There are all these kind of parameters that you can put inside of a contract. The one that I mentioned with the adultery and they entered into a prenup, it had a 5-year clause in it that it was only good for 5 years, and that after 5 years, that the person who committed adultery would no longer be on such strict terms.
Okay.
That worked for that couple.
Good.
And
That's great. Yeah,
we
sure.
entitled it a reconciliation agreement because really that's what it
Yeah.
was. They were trying to
Right, sure.
reconcile their
It was the way to
relationship.
make the betrayed party feel safe again and put in, yeah, parameters in place.
Yeah.
I think that my client who is working out, I think this is the law in her state, that it is it's sort of like there are legal parameters around like a prenup, right? That like it can't be signed the night before under duress, like things like that, right?
Yes.
And so they're similar for a postnup, that you can't like negotiate something in good faith that you're going to be married and then 5 days later be like, okay, I'm filing for divorce,
Yeah.
because it's not meant to
Oh,
be
yeah. Sure.
uh, a divorce decree.
Sure. That makes sense. And also, a contract, essentially you get out of a contract the same way regardless of the contract. So unconscionability, it's so unfair that no one in their right mind would have ever signed it. You
Yeah.
sign it under duress or within a certain time frame that no one would have done that, or you were forced to sign it, coerced. You didn't receive counsel or the right advice. So, and that time length between the time you received it and the time that it became effective, or the time that it was like, all of those things are factors that are considered when someone wants to set aside a contract.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I think that plays into it too.
Yeah.
It's all part of what would be considered fair.
Yes, right.
Fair
Exactly.
being a
Okay.
very subjective word, Kate. Very subjective.
Very subjective.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Um, so I was just thinking about where I want where we should go next in this conversation about separation.
I was admiring that I'm in white and you're in black, and I decided I like playing the good guy today with me
Yeah.
being in white and you being in black.
I'm the bad guy.
Yes, and I
Get
get to play the good
divorced.
guy
That's
today.
right.
Thank
That's
you.
right. Uh-huh. So I mean, are there other considerations, right? When you're thinking about separation versus just like filing, um, what are some advantages of one over the other? Let's say you're not in a state that requires it necessarily, right? Or um, are there reasons that one might want to take uh, that road or not, like disadvantages?
So most of the advantages and disadvantages are going to surround financial, going to surround whether, when the clock starts
Right.
for getting a divorce and whether that means something to you. And then the other one I think of is like if you're ready to start dating. Most of the time, divorces don't happen because one big giant thing happened. Divorces often, I did a reel yesterday, and I said divorces don't happen because somebody forgot to put more granola in the container when they finished it. They
Right.
happen because usually it's a lot of small things that add up over time. And then, yes, there is one big thing, but it was never the one big thing or any one small thing that did it. Like
Right.
it's usually this pattern that we identify when it's done. And so, one person is usually ready to date. It takes, right? So it takes two to say I do and one to say I don't. And by the
Hmm.
time you get to the one that says I don't, there is usually some difference in where they are at that time. And
Yes.
so I think of that as being part of, it could be an advantage or disadvantage depending on what state you're in as to whether
Mm.
you file and why you're filing or why you're separating.
Yes.
Also, timing I think is really important, especially as a parent. It may be that you're trying to um, schedule summer vacay. It could be that you're trying to make it so that when there is some sort of transition, that it's during the summer months. We talk about the trends in
Yep.
our law
Yep.
practice. That right now, March is usually one of our heaviest months for clients.
Yep.
So we have a lot of consults in January, new year, new you. And then in March, most of those people are returning to actually execute on the decision that we advised them of in January. And it
Right.
goes like that usually through the beginning of the summer.
Hmm.
And so timing might be something that's really important to you. Aside from all that, this sounds maybe a little shady, but depending on the time of year, you might ask for separation because you know that you've got an influx of money coming,
Mm.
that you know that you're considering selling the business, and what you thought you were going to sell it for is going to be different than what you're going to sell it for. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, which is financial reasons as to why you might want to separate. Now, of course, the argument is that asset something that the other person would be entitled to? It depends on what we're talking about, but that is some of the considerations I
Yeah.
think that we hear the most of. Yeah.
Yes. And I think, one of the things that you alluded to in the beginning of that, which I think is really important, right? When you said it takes two to say I do and one to say I don't, is that, and I always advise my clients of this, is that they've got to give their their spouse, the person who is receiving this information, no matter how much time, how many times you've said it, no matter how many, years you've been saying you're unhappy. When you finally say, I don't, they will be blindsided, they'll be shocked, all of the things. And they're going to need time to catch up. And because once you say, I'm done, you're like, let's go, right? You've been agonizing over this decision for usually years. And then once you finally are like, that's the last time I'm going to deal with this fucking granola situation. Um, right? Like, I'm done. Like, one day it hits you, you're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, okay, let's do it. And like, your partner's not there yet. And if you want to keep things as amicable as possible, if you want to make this transition as smooth as possible for your children, whatever else, maybe separation is a little bit of a stopgap to allow you the separation that you need and then the time to like emotionally process what's happening.
Right. Yes. I mean, it does tend to work that way. And there is some gender um,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
stereotypes that also play into that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. I mean, the idea that you have been saying along the way, hey, listen, I don't know much longer I can do this. I don't know how much longer I'm going to let you talk to me like this. I feel like, and then you go, okay, I'm done. I mean, I remember being in a therapist. You second guess yourself when you're the one making the decision to separate.
Yeah.
Often is what I
Yep.
hear.
Yep.
I experienced it as well. Like, am I making the right decision for myself, for my friends, my kids, for my family? And I remember I had agonized over it and been vocal about it, and then sat down in a therapist's office to understand why I was second guessing myself. And I remember her saying, "Well, if you're not sure, then just go back." And I said, "What? No!" Like,
Yeah.
I
And
respect
boom.
you, but and then it was like, oh my God, yeah, I've agonized over this so long. I can't go through this anymore. But it was like that moment where I was like, no, I'm confident that this is the right decision for me. And
Yeah.
yes, it's going to be incredibly painful and not easy, but there are those moments, and you do have to wait for the other person to catch up. And well,
Mm-hmm.
I say you do and you don't. Um,
Well, to a
you know,
to a point. You don't have to wait
yes,
forever. That's I was saying this to a client the other day. She's like, "But how long do I have to wait?" And I'm like, "Oh no, it's finite. It's
right,
finite. You want to be mindful
yes,
and compassionate for their journey, and then you put an end to it because we're not then going to allow for stonewalling."
yes. My least favorite tactic is stonewalling.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's so important to recognize that, but to also recognize that at some point, you're not the same person you were when you were married to that person, and they are likely not to be the same person. And we hold people to this. We sometimes I notice this more often than not that we keep thinking that they're the same person we were married to, and the people we marry are not the people we divorce, and then there could be growth beyond that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I'd like to think, and I think it's harder said. I think it's harder done than said, but that we should assume good intent as we go through this process.
Yeah.
But it can be hard because you're fixated on who you believe that person was when they were married to you. So, I mean, I've remarried. I'm very happy about my decision to remarry. And I'm quite confident that the person that my husband was is not the same person that he was in his first marriage. I don't know if I
Right.
would have married that guy, I mean, I know what he was like in his, I don't know if I would have married him, but I love
Mm-hmm.
him now and I like him as well. So,
Right.
and
Yes,
my
exactly.
ex-husband is remarried, and I'm sure that he would say the same thing about his wife. So that those being able to look at it through a different lens to help you see the other side, I think is important. And I think harder for some people than others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But look, there are a myriad ways to make this um there are myriad ways to make this uh, a better, more amicable process, and there's myriad ways to make it way worse.
Yes.
And right, assuming good intent is a way to, you know, make things grease the wheels a little bit and like make things a little bit better,
I
without
think,
being naive and stupid about it, right? We don't want that.
right. One of the things that I did when I was going through my divorce that I still employ on a regular basis is this idea, and I don't know if we've talked about it before, but the idea um, that there's a stimulus and a response, and that I'm not. It's Man's Search for Meaning, which is an
Hmm.
old book, and in it there's a phrase in the foreword, and it essentially says, between stimulus and response there is space, and in that space there is the freedom to choose. And
Yes.
putting some space between whatever it is that is triggering you, whatever that stimulus is, whatever that thing is that makes you want to respond right away. One of the greatest pieces of advice is to just take that space. Don't hit send. You don't have to answer the text right away. You don't
No.
even have to answer the phone unless it's an emergency. And even then, give it a minute. Those things are okay. And those are the things that you're in control of. And there's so much power in that choice. And how you
Absolutely.
respond could totally change, the entire trajectory. So it's
Yep.
that assuming good intent, and also like taking that space even when you don't even think you need it,
Yep.
before you respond to that thing, whatever that thing is.
Yep. I could not agree more. Put the phone down, walk around the block,
I still
clear
have to
your
practice it.
head. Absolutely.
Can I have a minute?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, right. Give me 1 second. And right, and
Yeah.
like really practice this in your daily life. Practice it with the easy people so that
Yes.
when the harder people come around, it just is second nature for you to say, "You know what? That's a really interesting idea. Can I get back to you about that?"
Yes. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Gosh, thank you for giving me your perspective. I need a little bit of time to process it. Can we have pause? Can we hit pause for a
Mm-hmm.
minute?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are very easy ways to hit pause. The other thing that I don't think people appreciate as much as I think they would, or they do, is the whole idea of using what we have in our bodies. And I'm not going to get all, yogi on you, but, I remember uh, knowing what your coping mechanism is in hard
Mm-hmm.
times,
Mm-hmm.
teaching your children to explore what their coping mechanism is in hard times. Um, but, what you can do, like if your body is your own pharmacy,
Mm.
so how to explore that as an opportunity to help you through some hard stuff. So if I say exercise, people who don't exercise are like, "Ooh, like I'm not going to the gym." And I don't feel good about myself. And why would I go do that? And I'm too old, my knees, I can't go run.
Mm.
I don't want to go
Mm-hmm.
walk, it's cold outside. Like, there are plenty of reasons. So do some squats, whatever it is that's going to get your heart beating, the dopamine coming, the all the things that
Yes.
allow you to use your body as your own personal pharmacy to help you through some hard stuff. I think it's really underestimated.
No, it
And
absolutely. I mean, and as a coach, look, as a coach, I use these tools all the time, right? But
right.
yes, and I think culturally we're kind of getting there, right? Like it's much more normalized at this point. But yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I still hear it.
Absolutely.
I still have a hard time. When I went through the the world of therapy for my own separation and divorce, she would
Hmm.
always start with, put your feet flat on the floor and breathe. That is so hard for me.
Uh-huh. That's
No, please
grounding.
don't make me do that. I don't want to do that. I don't think, I'm not thinking when I'm doing that. I'm annoyed
Exactly.
that you're making me
That's
pause.
And that's the point. You're not thinking, you're getting into your body. You're grounding
No,
yourself in your
no, Kate,
body.
I'm just annoyed that you're
Yeah.
making me do that.
And yet, what's coming up for you when you're doing that,
Yes.
right? Like,
I know.
it's
I'm already starting to
important,
sweat.
right? Which is like information, right?
Yes.
That's information.
Yes, I get
Um,
it.
yep. I know, such a pain in the ass. Being present is so annoying when you
It
don't want to be
is.
present to the feelings that are happening, but
I
yet,
know. I've got a very busy day.
that's right. That's right. Don't make me feel things. Stop, right?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Um, Nicole, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation about so many things. But
Yes.
I think your perspective on separation is really important and really helped clarify a lot questions that I had about, certainly North Carolina and like what does this year do? We're just supposed to like twiddle our thumbs for a year, but no, you're supposed to start making decisions. Any other final words of wisdom for our listeners today?
Regardless of what state you're in, the coping skills, the 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 knowledge, the resources, all of those things, regardless of even what the law is, there are things that your lawyer is not going to be able to tell you. And you shouldn't be asking them to tell you. There are other resources like coaches, like programs online. There's such good books to read still, even if you're an Audible listener, that are going to help people through the journey that your lawyer isn't going to be equipped to do, and that's not what you're paying them for.
That's
And
so
so,
true.
your lawyer is there to get you through the legal process, and they're not planning your future. And
That's right.
so, I focus so much of my practice for client, like I can consult with anyone anywhere about how to manage the divorce process, regardless of whether you're in North Carolina, because that is not what your lawyer is trained to do. And
Hmm.
so, finding the right people to be in your village, to be in your team, will be so paramount to your success. And so, and not only your success, but if you're a parent, your kid's success. So,
Absolutely.
by the time you get to a courtroom, whatever damage you think is going to be done has probably already been done. And so, getting ahead of that can make such a big difference to your success.
I
So,
love that. Thank you. I so
um,
agree. I so agree. And you just did a wonderful plug for my Phoenix Rising program because that's exactly what we do, right? It's the
yes,
support,
so good.
strategy, the expertise, all of it. So,
Yes,
yep, absolutely. Thank
happy
you.
to support.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And
Thanks
thank
so much,
you.
Nicole. And where can everybody find you and your work, your book, all the things?
Please follow me on Instagram. I know
Mm.
I'm like a new generation to Instagram because I'm really that Facebook generation.
Girl, I
Um,
same.
so
Oh,
I'm working on it, but it has been fun for me. I do lots of reels on Instagram now that I
good
hope
for you.
people found helpful. And of course, my book's still on Audible. I narrated it and loved it. That'd be my side hustle if I could have another. And I think on Amazon. So if you type in Nicole Sodoma, you are going to easily find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole. It was so good to see you again.
Thanks. You too.